All right, everyone, as we get set here, it's a Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025. How's everybody doing out there today? So, it's been a couple of years since I did this alongside the upcoming NHL free agency frenzy, and I should be getting way with that alongside Cooper Hopkins later this week. So, I didn't want to let the 2025 State of the Union address for Detroit sports rot all the way through because the upcoming is the MLB trade deadline, and that is a little over a week away. So I wanted to go ahead and get into this right now. So I'm going to bring Ian in. He can go ahead and chime in across, but I do have a lot to get to. If he just wants to listen in, that'll be cool too. But we're going to start with the Detroit Tigers here. So I've kept the notes and everything else all updated through the latest series against the Mariners and through the first half. We'll get you the full record and everything else and get you the landscape across, but just to try to keep everything together. So for the Detroit Tigers, they were 59-38. Best record in the MLB, despite losing the last four games and giving up 35 runs in a three-game sweep against the Seattle Mariners at the time after that series. Were 51-45, and also a wild card team. So for the All-Star recap, it's one that I would like to forget alongside with everyone else in AL Central, because unless you're a member of the Royals and the Guardians and everyone else, they felt pretty good, but not the Tigers. And I know it doesn't really matter because it's an all-star performance, but for this team in particular, it's pretty terrible considering he had six starters. Gleyber Torres 0 for 2 with a strikeout. Riley Green 0 for 3 with two strikeouts. Zach McKinstry 0 for 1, but I won't throw any shade his way. And Javi Baez 0 for 2. It was a combined 0 for 7 with three strikeouts for hitting. And for pitching, it was 1 2/3 between Tarek Skubal and Casey Mize as they gave up 4 hits, 3 earned runs, and they punched out 3 batters. So in between 6 starters, all-star starters for the Tigers, that's got to be the most poor thing I've ever seen. I hope to never see that again. But the swing-off for Kyle Schwarber was sick as the National League took the victory and after a 6-6 tie. So here's those numbers I want to jump into from the first half. Let me know what you think. So up to date for the Tigers, they're 60-41. They still have a very good hold of the AL Central, but they have lost 7 of the last 8. So this is the interesting part of it, because if I take the timing in between these notes, and let's say that I did this show 2.5 weeks ago, I think a lot of this would be more sunshine and rainbows. But again, this team's in first place. And I'll say this, no question now, regardless of their recent slide, and we'll get more into those numbers in a minute, that A.J. Hinch is probably the best manager in the business. At worst, he's top 3, but I think he might be turning chicken bleep into chicken salad. So after the first half, here's what we had. Tigers 59-38, the Royals were 47-50, Twins 47-49, Guardians 46-49, and the White Sox 32-65. It was an 11.5 game lead heading into the All-Star break. It was 97 games played, and it was the largest division lead in baseball. So I put the notes, all that will be published when the show goes up as far as the All-Star designations. I'm going to give you some numbers. So Riley Green, 24, 95 games played of the 97, so he's been healthy. 284, 24 home runs, 78 RBI, with 27 walks and 125 strikeouts. He's well on his way. If you talk about the strikeouts, just the average is decent, and the home runs are good with that uppercut swing, but he's well on his way to set the Tigers' record for the most strikeouts in single season history. That was set by Cecil Fielder in the early 90s, and that would put him somewhere around roughly 245 strikeouts, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. I would say probably 226 more to be accurate, but that is a ton because it's feast or famine as far as the home runs, but still 284 is a good average. For Spencer Torkelson, 91 games played, so he's been relatively healthy, the 25-year-old. 234 average, again, a 50 points difference. That's where we talk about things a little bit more. 21 home runs for him, which is good, but 59 RBI, 44 walks. So that's been more than Torkelson usually draws, but 92 strikeouts. You'd like to see that average get closer to a 250, 260 as far as being a number one pick several years ago. Gleyber Torres in that 1-year prove-it deal, 20 years of age, 84 games played, 281, 9 home runs, 45 RBI. He's got that Juan Soto going on. Usually when you have more walks than strikeouts, 51 walks, 46 strikeouts. Very good number for Gleyber Torres. But my question to all of you as we go across from this, are Tigers going to be able to hold on to him? And normally I wouldn't say this considering where the Tigers are, but you saw what they did last year alongside Jack Flaherty and then bringing in Trace Sweeney. The Tigers could, and I don't see them doing this where they are in the standings, but they could shop Gleyber Torres and he could come back. But I doubt if they do shop him on the one-year deal. Yes, they'll get a lot for him, but I don't think he will come back. So that's really theirs to hold for a playoff run should they get there. Javier Baez, 32 years of age, he's had a resurgent season for him for the most part. 79 games played, 275 average, 10 home runs, 39 RBI, 9 walks, 63 strikeouts. The walks and strikeouts are the same for Dylan Dingler in the catcher position, 26-year-old. 72 games played, 265, 8 home runs, 36 RBI, again with the 9 and 63. Kerry Carpenter, he's missed some games, and that's what's hurt the Tigers a little bit. 78 games played for the 27-year-old. 257, 16 bombs, 32 RBI, 7 walks only for Kerry. It should be more. 60 strikeouts. That is a big disparity. And then a couple more for you before we get into who needs a big second half. Zach McKinstry, he's been very good this year. And again, he's one of the guys I wouldn't really give any slander to wherever the Tigers would be. 30 years old for the utility man. 88 games played, 285 average, 8 home runs, 31 RBI, 34 walks, and 72 strikeouts. Excellent season for McKinstry. And then one more for you, Colt Keith, 23 years old, 85 games played, 264, 8 home runs, 30 RBI, 33 walks, and 60 strikeouts. So not bad numbers for most. Although Riley Green, again, you want to cut down on those strikeouts. I don't think he's going to. I think he might be setting the record. Zach McKinstry, excellent year. Colt Keith, you want to see him to continue to improve. But who needs a big second half? This one's pretty easy as far as I'll give you 3 names. And a lot of them is because they really haven't played this year. They've dealt with a lot of injuries. Parker Meadows, you remember in that August and September last year when he went absolutely crazy? He hit that walk-off essentially against the San Diego Padres. Again, I know it was on the road, but it was an extra innings with the big home runs and big catches against the Mariners late in the year. The Tigers had a 0.2% chance of making the postseason, and he was a big reason why that turned around. But the 25-year-old's only played 32 games this year. He's only hitting 193, and he's more close to a 282-90 type. 2 home runs, 9 RBI, 10 walks, 36 strikeouts. I know the average is probably 20 or 30 points higher than I said. But Parker Meadows, his numbers are way better. I would expect him to improve. They need that if the Tigers want to get anywhere. Winsell Perez for the 25-year-old, 39 games played, 262, 7 home runs, 20 RBI, 9 walks, and 30 strikeouts. You got to get this guy back into the field because he plays everywhere in the outfield. He could play in the infield. He's got speed. He's a good switch bat. And he's another option for A.J. Hinch to use. And they need Winsell to stay healthy. And then Matt Vierling. Can't really even talk about Matt Vierling this year because the 28-year-old former Phillies only played 13 games. Again, I'm not going to let it slide that he's hitting 158, but he's barely been in the lineup. No home runs, 4 RBI, 6 walks, and 9 strikeouts. They need health more so than anything for Parker Meadows, Winsell Perez, and Matt Vierling. And it should be able to percolate a little bit, but it's got to start sooner rather than later. Let's move on to the pitching before I give you some other fuzzies and then kind of break down what I want to see at the deadline. So Tarik Skubal, 28 years of age. He's got another year and a half of control, but that's it and that's all. 10-3, 2.23 ERA, 121 innings pitched, 30 earned runs, 16 walks, 153 strikeouts, but his whip is sparkling. That is walks and hits per innings pitched, 0.83 and a 4.6 in wins above replacement. Yes, he's an upcoming free agent in 2027, and I understand it is July 22nd, 2025, but every day that goes by for Tarik Skubal, and you kind of think about for Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers, I know it's different sports and all, but when you have a superstar, and Ian knows this better than anyone, alongside with Bobby Witt, that you count the clock every day, although I think that Witt's going to end up being a lifer for the KC Royals, but I can't say the same for Tarik Skubal. I don't know yet. especially as Scott Boras as his agent. Will the Tigers move him at the deadline next season? It's not impossible to say that, but you would have to think for Tarek, and I'm just spitballing here. He's going to want, again, he's 28, a 7 to 9 year deal worth 350 to 400 million. And from several years ago, in between moving Justin Verlander of the Houston Astros for Jake Rogers and two players that were never made the MLB roster after Jake, if I'm in that same situation for Tarek and I think that he's here and he wants to stay here, I'm giving him the money. I'm sorry. You look at it as far as for Justin Verlander and you say, hey, you lost one of the best to ever do it for pretty much absolutely nothing. No disrespect to Jake Rogers, but you got to get more than just that. And I don't want to have that happen to Tarek Skubal. And I'll be honest with you, the Tigers' payroll only sits right in the middle because Javier Baez makes the money that he makes. Ian, if you want to step in a little bit more until I get more into these notes, you can.
Well, straight up, John, Chris Illich, there's one thing that he has to do is pony up the money and sign Skubal to do. Seriously.
Yeah.
That is not a goal. That is not a wish. That is an obligation and, dare I say, a requirement.
I appreciate
for his next off season. If you do not sign Skubal after his father did everything to bring World Series, the least this guy can do is pony up enough money to sign a pitcher. Correct me if I'm wrong, he's the first Cy Young pitcher since Verlander and Scherzer, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, sign him. Keep him.
I appreciate you saying that, Ian, because it does make me feel a little better. And I also appreciate you coming from the instance of Chris Illich, because we know about all of that. And if that doesn't happen, I think there's going to be a riot here. Casey Mize, 28 years of age, 9-3, 3.15 ERA. So the numbers have been better than expected for Casey. 88.2 innings pitched, 22 walks, 77 strikeouts. It is a career pace. 31 earned runs and a 1.22 whip. Again, sometimes it takes a little while. I know Spencer Torkelson hasn't hit what he's liked to, but Casey Mize, I think, has been really good as a solid number 2 in this rotation. And I feel pretty good about where Casey is. I think he's going to continue to improve. Now, Will Vest has been electric. He's been the Tigers' best bullpen arm this season. 30 years of age, 5-1, 2.30 ERA, 43 innings pitched, 11 earned runs, 15 walks, 48 strikeouts, and a whip just over 1 at 1.02. He's been pretty good there, but they need a bridge for Will Vest. And I think that's something that they should easily target at the deadline. How many moves we'll talk about. Jack Flaherty underneath a big second half. No kidding for Jack Flaherty. He has been awful to me. 29 years of age, 5-9, 4.65 ERA. Yes, that's a little high. 100.2 innings pitched, but his ERA in away games is just god awful. 6.08 for Jack Flaherty. It just doesn't make sense. 19 home runs allowed, 40 walks, 124 strikeouts. The strikeouts are good, and the whip isn't terrible at 1.24. It could be better, but you cannot have 6.08 ERA in away games and expect to win. You have a lot of times where Jack Flaherty gets to the second or third inning, and it feels like the Tigers are already down 4 or 5 runs, and that just doesn't work. Another one of these guys from a couple of years ago who I really liked, I hope can get a bounce back because the Tigers have to have it. Tyler Holton hasn't been his usual self. 4-3 record, 3.80 ERA with 47 in the third innings pitched. It's 20 earned runs, 8 walks, 40 strikeouts, 1.10 whip, and a 1.4 WAR. But he could usually be about 2.5 to 3.0 at his best. And Tommy Kahnle, he started the year blazing hot. But this is from 97.1 and Jeff Rager on the Detroit side of it. From March 28th to June 29th, he's played 32 games and bullpen appearances, 35.2 innings pitched, a 1.77 ERA. So again, that was from 28th to June 29th, from March to June. Those numbers were fantastic, and that's where Tommy Kahnle was terrific. But from just July 2nd to 18th, so that's just about a week, couple weeks and a half time, it was 7 appearances with 3.1 innings pitched, a 37.80 ERA. They can't keep throwing him out there and hoping for better results. That was his tweet directly, and I agree because, again, you look at the Tigers' record in totality, and I'll scroll back up into my notes. 60-41 is pretty good, all things considered. But did you know in the last 40 games for the Detroit Tigers, they're 20-20. So they're a middling 500 team. And the trade deadline, again, is Thursday, July 31st. You have a little over a week and a half to react here. And I think that there is a lot for them to do. Now, I'm going to give you my full landscape of what they should do. Obviously, they're not going to be able to accomplish all of these things, but we're going to go across. Ian, do you got any thoughts before I break it down?
So, you mentioned your pitching, and I wanted to ask you, how many lefties do you have in your bullpen?
Right now, and besides for Tyler Holton, I could really only think of one other that they turn to, Ian, so I'd say 2.
Okay, so I have no idea what my team, the Royals, are going to look like at the deadline. They don't know if they want to win, if they want to lose, or whatever. But we have 3 guys on our pitching staff who are going to who could fetch a solid return. And from what you are talking about, all 3 of these guys provide a service that is needed, plus a bonus. That being Seth Lugo, Angel Zerpa, and Carlos Estevez. Now, I understand your closer situation may not be bad, but think about it. You have whoever your closer is right now, and Carlos Estevez on the back end, plus Angel Zerpa, who has revived his career as a left-hander, and Seth Lugo. I mean, I'm sure you've seen what his statistics look like this year.
He's been absolutely phenomenal, Ian, but you can break it down if you want before I get into the next part.
Well, I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but what I will say is this. Whoever goes after, if the Royals sell at the deadline and they trade these guys away, the Royals fans are expecting a monumental haul, whether that be in bulk or simply by skill of the player. For instance, if the Cubs were to get Lugo, we are accepting nothing more, nothing less than Owen Casey. I think that's his name. It's Owen some their top outfield prospect.
Okay.
And more.
So the price is going to be high, and as you said before I transition here for what's going to happen to the Tigers, maybe you're right. Will Vest might be working on for Detroit, but if you got Zerpa and Estevez able to be the bridge to that 7th, 8th, into the 9th inning, that's exactly what this team needs. That's what we were talking about. I appreciate that because you're right. That's where the Tigers are the most weak. My question is, as I move along here, when you think about it, in between the Tigers and the Royals or the Guardians or anything else, because maybe the Guardians are making some moves, how likely do you think that these GMs would be to trade within division?
See that right there is the question,
right?
Isn't it? But here's the thing: the Royals right now, unless this emergence of John Rave and Jack Caglione and the outfield as a whole unless this emergence of power hitting continues to improve for them, they're gonna need to sell. And quite honestly, if they stand pat at the deadline and don't do anything, the fans are gonna riot.
Okay.
Because they refused. They didn't address the outfield in the offseason, which had them going into the year with guys like Hunter Renfroe and Drew Waters, and basically they brought up Caglione because they had to, because nothing else was working. So they have to do something at the deadline. And if that means trading within division, JJ Piccolo, beggars can't be choosers.
Well, Ian, that's another good look that makes me excited for about a week and a half. We're thinking both of our teams are going to be active at the deadline, at least in some instances, maybe more or less. I don't know how much the Tigers will be active, but I'm going to get across a couple things I'm going to talk about here. So for the hitting aspect, a corner infield bat for Detroit. Make the case for that. What about Gino Suarez, 33 years of age and upcoming free agent? He had a former tenure with the Tigers before they traded him for Alfredo Simon. That did not work out. 47 and 50 at the time for the Diamondbacks, who are a good team, but they are 11 games back in a brutal NL West with the Dodgers. Again, 58 and 39, Padres 52 and 44, Giants 52 and 45. They're all likely eyeing the postseason. I don't think the Diamondbacks get there, even for as good as they are. Detroit really could use a key bat with not a lot of cost in mind, but therein lies the issue because they're saying Gino might get a reunion back with the Mariners, who are in a wild card spot. You know, you always have the Dodgers and Yankees in terms of what that could be. And for me, you have Zach McKinstry, as we talked about, and Javier Baez, who can move multiple positions. I don't have any problem putting Eugenio Suarez back at third because I need a consistent bat and an RBI man that's going to either hit it out of Comerica Park or consistently hit that doubles gap and drive in runs. They need something like that. And if he doesn't cost that much, that would be something I would go after. And again, that's what Chris Ilitch and Scott Harris and AJ Hinch are going to have to figure out. And again, before I digress off of the Diamondbacks, Merrill Kelly alongside Zach Gallen. I think Zach Gallen would cost significantly less considering he's had a terrible year. But Merrill Kelly's another one of those guys. But Gino, like Merrill, I think is like 35. It's going to be a rental, and I don't think you're going to get anything long term. But again, that isn't the only issue. It's going to be difficult to make a trade with the Boston Red Sox, but I kept seeing this across because recently their 10-game win streak at 53 and 45 was snapped. Again, they last played the Chicago Cubs. But it would be nice to get an elite bullpen arm like Aroldis Chapman. Again, Ian and I know him very well. And between the Reds, the Yankees, the Cubs, again, played for the Kansas City Royals. And now on the other side for Aroldis Chapman and the Red Sox, look, I'm not going to entertain a rumor like Jarren Duran, but that price would be astronomical to me. But here's the thing for the Red Sox that people really aren't maybe hip to yet because they're young, at least. Roman Anthony was one of the recent call-ups for the Boston Red Sox. He looks like he could lock an outfield spot if he is as high on the Red Sox depth charts and prospect pools as they say. And we already know about Cedar Rafaela. Again, he plays everywhere in the infield, but he's dynamic in the outfield, capable of hitting walk-offs. I think Roman Anthony and Cedar are going to cost a lot of money for the Red Sox. And yes, I know there is no cap in baseball, but you do want to keep everything locked and tidy. Key pieces in their outfield for the foreseeable, and I kept seeing a bunch of different articles that Jarren Duran might be shocked just because the Red Sox don't want to tie a ton of money into 4 or 5 outfielders. Could they get a package deal for Chapman and Duran? Look, that could be fantasy land, but if you have to spend a little bit more, that's probably where I would do it. Yes, Chapman's not going to be a long term, but Jarren Duran could be a key piece for the Tigers for a long time. And then one other spot, and I don't think they're going to add here. I think it's more so bat and bullpen, especially bullpen first if I had to go. But spot number 3 is a starter. Again, it's not like Jack Flaherty is providing a top 5 rotation set of work. I can count on Tarek Skubal. Maybe even the projection of Casey Mize and what he's done this year. Maybe Reese Olson, if you want to talk about it. But I wouldn't mind pitching chaos from AJ Hinch again. But AJ said the only reason I did that last year is because we didn't really have 3 or 4 adequate starters. So doesn't that still mean that this team is missing a few key pieces? And again, if you talk about that group, as I just mentioned with Gino Suarez and Merrill Kelly, let's say you address all 3. Does that even mean the Tigers are going to win more than one playoff round? Because finally now, after the last couple of days when I checked, it was Dodgers 1, Tigers 2, Yankees 3 as far as World Series odds, and they finally moved the Tigers to the third spot. And that's after going 20-20 in the last 40 games. So I'm telling you this. Yes, I think the Tigers will be a playoff team. Yes, you should be happy with the way that things have gone, especially early. But as of late, again, some of the stuff that I've talked about off the air, as far as this Tigers team overachieving, and that's okay because that's what their roster is. But I don't think we're going to see this team have a long playoff run. If I want to make the equivalent comparison, I said this to Ian a bunch of times during any of our hockey coverages, which I can't wait to get back into, about the Washington Capitals. They're not going to have a long playoff run, and they did not after they beat the Montreal Canadiens. That was it. Tigers might get their first round bye, but after that happens, I just don't know. I think this team, point blank, as I said today, is overachieving. Making a major move and blowing up the core is not the smartest thing to do at the moment. They were talking about this is never going to happen, but Paul Skeens after Tarek Skubal maybe leaves, what would that even look like? That's going to be Colt Keith, Max Clark, Kerry Carpenter, maybe Riley Grit. I mean, that's going to be a whole bunch of stuff. That's never going to happen. Yes, he'd be a generational hurler, but if you want to get somebody really good like that, you're blowing up your core.
Yeah, and now, John, I will tell you this. Simply by getting a quality starter, and yes, I'm going to say Lugo because he is going to be very likely the best one available at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
If you get Lugo, I can't guarantee you a series victory, but I will guarantee you at least 5 games in the ALDS if it's against a really tough team. And if it's not, you win in 4. Because having Lugo, okay, so let's see what that would look like. Skubal is your number 1, obviously.
Yep.
Lugo, from what you're saying, Lugo's at your number 2.
Yes, I would.
He is your number 2 starter. And, you talked about Mize's production so far this season. He's a decent number 3, and then you got, I don't know who you put. I don't know your roster fully.
Say maybe Jack Flaherty then at 4. I would feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean 1, 2, 3 right there.
Yes.
I mean 1 and 2 alone. Lugo hasn't lost many games, and the games he has lost, it's because the Royals can't score worth a darn.
Yeah, that's been the problem. As you talked about, they're going to see how they can kind of make some moves at the deadline, a week and a half. I'm going to close out with the Tigers on this. I mentioned with Gleyber Torres and the 1-year, $15 million prove-it deal. Is there any chance that he gets moved again? I'm saying from the Tigers, or I'll say no. But considering, would you rather get something for him if the World Series isn't likely? That's not likely for the Tigers. You can make the argument whether or not to move Gleyber Torres. If they did, I would not be shocked, and I would not make a conveniently, as Ian's already on here. I will mention this. The Tigers do have one more game outside of regular TV programming with KC. That's on Friday, August 22nd on Apple TV. Detroit's going to close the regular season on September 28th. It's the final 6 games on the road with the Guardians, 6 of the last 12, and the Red Sox. But here's my close on the Tigers. I want to know what your expectations are. Are you okay with them making the playoffs? Are you okay with a little bit more? Because if they don't win the World Series, is that okay to you? Because I don't think that's realistic at this point for what this team is. Do you believe that they should still have the second best odds behind the Dodgers, or would you say that's too high? I think that's been high for a long time. Should they go all in at the deadline? What's acceptable to you? I think to me, as I close this here, you got to at least add a pitcher, or you got to at least add a bat. You got to do something. If you stand pat, like Ian said, even with his own team, the Royals, that would be a mistake because this team needs help, and they're showing over the last 40 games that they need to do so. So that is my outlook there on the Tigers. I appreciate Ian joining in with me. I'm going to step into the Lions here. I go across all of Detroit pro sports, then we'll go with the Pistons and the Red Wings. And again, this isn't where I'm as knowledgeable, but we're going to break this down. And again, like Bill O'Reilly, we're going to do it live. F it, we'll do it live. So, game Sunday, unless listed. And this year for the Lions, after being 15-2, their projected win total is at 10.5. So let's do this live and go game by game and see where if I think that's close to the projection line or not. So the Lions will open their season on September 7th against the Green Bay Packers. Again, a 4:25 game on CBS. Considering Aiden Hutchinson's just coming back, you've replaced both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn for offense and defensive coordinators. You're moving some things around. Packers may or may not be as good as they were last year. We'll break those records down after the schedule. I'm going to say the opening on the road is a loss. That means the Lions will start 0-1. Next week, it'll be December 14th, the Bears at home, the home opener, Ford Field, 1 o'clock on Fox. They'll go 1-1. Monday Night Football already in Week 3, September 22nd, Baltimore Ravens, 8:15 on ABC. Baltimore Ravens, whether or not they win the Super Bowl, are always a team that's a pain in the you-know-what as far as the regular season. I will say the Lions lose that game, go 1-2. They'll rebound next week against the Cleveland Browns. That's September 20th, 1 o'clock on Fox. That'll be a 2-2 record for the Lions. Week 5, October 5th, Cincinnati Bengals, 4:25 on Fox. They could be a top 10 team, especially if Joe Burrow and company can rebound. I'll say the Lions win that game. They go 3-2. Now they got 2 more games before they head into the bye. Week 6 is Sunday Night Football game, so another primetime one. That one's against the Chiefs, 8:20 on NBC. Chiefs are likely still top 3 for me, regardless of wherever they have, because they got Patrick Mahomes. And I'll say this too: whether or not the Lions have the regular season success they usually do against the Chiefs, mark it down as a loss as the Lions still try to get things together. That makes them 3-3 through Week 6, and they got one more heading into the bye. Another Monday Night Football game after Sunday night, October 20th against the Bucs. 7 o'clock on ABC. Could be outside the top 10, but I say the Lions sneak out a win. So they'll have a 4-3 record. Again, in home games, so far I have them going 3-0 into the bye, and road tilts 1-3. You could probably swing that in one direction as you should, but 4-3 heading into the break. So having to deal with some issues, but see if they can make a run, and that's what I have them doing after the bye. Minnesota Vikings is going to be starting J.J. McCarthy this year on their depth chart, maybe most likely after Sam Darnold has left. I have them winning that 1 o'clock game November 2nd against the Vikings at home at Ford Field, 5-3. This is where you could flip. The Washington Commanders, we saw what Jaden Daniels did to a decimated Lions defense last year, November 9th in Week 10, 4:25 on Fox. I had the Lions actually winning that game. Probably should not because they're legit 6-3. You could definitely flip that, and that's going to get you closer to the 10.5 win total this year. Sunday Night Football against the defending Super Bowl champ Philadelphia Eagles on the road, 6-4. I'm not giving that one to the Lions on Sunday night, but they will rebound before Thanksgiving, November 23rd, New York Giants, 1 o'clock on Fox. The Lions will be 7-4. I have the Lions winning their Thanksgiving tilt against the Packers. Sometimes they don't. They'll be 8-4. Then it's another Thursday night game after Thursday night Thanksgiving, so it's going to be a short turnaround from the 27th to December 4th, 8:15 on Amazon Prime against the Boys. I have them beating Dallas 9-4. Who knows? That could be a flip. I have the Lions losing the next game, Week 15, against the Rams on the road. Against Stafford, toss-up always a problem. Yes, it could be. I'll have to take the Lions losing that one, 9-5, but they will win out the rest, according to me. Again, so that puts them a game and a half above their total, at least most likely. The Steelers, the Vikings, and the Bears. It'll be 2 of the last 3 on the road, but they will have their final home game against the Steelers, 10-5. Then the Vikings, 11-5. Bears, 12-5. The win total is at 10.5. The Hutchinson returning from injury. They've lost Frank Ragnow in the middle. They've lost Zietzler down the middle as far as trying to protect Jared Goff. And then you're replacing both of your coordinators. The Lions should take a little bit of a step back. That's what I have. But 12-5, That's a little bit above the respected, but nowhere near 15-2. Should still be a playoff team, but they're going to deal with a little bit of issues. So that's where I have it there. As far as the NFC North, the Lions, again, last year were 15-2. They were undefeated on the road. It was the first time they ever did that in franchise history. Let me make sure that I get Ian back in here because I think that this was taken out. Give me 1 second. I'll pause. Should be able to come back in. 14-3 for the Minnesota Vikings. 11-6 for the Green Bay Packers. Again, Lions, Vikings, Packers all made the postseason. Chicago Bears were 5-12. The Lions record is, or the Lions schedule, I should say, is going to be very difficult because they have 11 games against playoff teams from 2024. That's tied with the Eagles, who won the Super Bowl for the most in the NFL. As far as what's different for Detroit, the sudden retirement of Frank Ragnow is going to create a hold on the middle. Again, Kevin Zietzler is also out. The Lions are replacing, as you mentioned, both coordinators, Ben Johnson, who's now the head coach of the Bears. It's going to make things very interesting when the NFC North foes face off against each other. And then Aaron Glenn is now the new head coach of the New York Jets, who the Lions do not play this year. It's going to be now the jobs of John Morton and Kelvin Shepard in respect to work with Dan Campbell. Now, again, Shepard is supposedly green as a play caller, but can he survive if the Lions' defense is decimated by injuries again? And the same goes for Morton on the offensive end. Will they be as prolific and that two-headed monster as far as Jahmyr Gibbs and everything down the middle for running back side and David Montgomery and Amon-Ra St. Brown? I think that's going to take some time. Again, for Aiden Hutchinson is also ready to go. Again, a couple of seasons ago, 51 tackles and 11.5 sacks in 2023 for the U of M man. But I don't think we can expect him to be a monster out of the gate because they want to make sure the 24-year-old stays healthy. Aleem McNeil is going to miss the early portion of the season as well. Again, the team was 15-2 last season, coming back off of back-to-back NFC North titles. 7-2 at Ford Field last year, 8-0 undefeated on the road for the first time ever. They're going to take a step back. And again, if it goes below the point total of 10.5 wins, is 10-7 enough to win the division? Because I think the goal for fans, and I know this is crazy to say over the last few years, but that's how it's been. They've been good. Their goal is making a Super Bowl, not alone just winning it. Again, they never made one in team history, but that is what the fans expect. And I want to know, are you still happy just to have competitive football? Or is the Lombardi Trophy the only thing that matters for the Lions? They're going to have to make a lot of adjustments. They got new coordinators. They got some key losses. I do think they'll take a step back, but I do think they're going to be a playoff team. Ian, do you have any thoughts and maybe some thoughts for the Chiefs as well?
Well, it's again, this is crazy to say, but it's another quest for another Lombardi. You know, when you have Patrick Mahomes, your goal is always the Lombardi.
That's all it takes. And again, let's talk about dishing out cash for the studs as far as Detroit. Because, go ahead.
You gotta understand, even though, look, three Super Bowl championships later, this still feels like a fever dream.
Yeah, I bet. Because, you know, as you said, with the generational guy that you do, you always have a chance to get more, and that's always the goal. And I don't think that's going to be the end-all, be-all for Patrick Mahomes. I think you could at least get a couple of more before it's all said and done, and that is not out of the realm of possibility. So for the Lions, I will close out with this: $120 million for wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown until 2028. You got $112 million for Penei Sewell in the mix for the right tackle, 25 years of age until 2029. Again, Aleem McNeil is going to miss some time. He just signed a 4-year deal at $97 million for the 25-year-old until 2028. And Kirby Joseph at the safety spot, 4 years, $86 million until 2029. So you got big cash payouts for Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, Aleem McNeil at the defensive tackle spot, and safety Kirby Joseph, who's 24. These are all good young players for the most part, but Ian knows this better than anyone else. You get part of that Super Bowl run as you had with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and company. You got to start paying everyone else, and that is where the Lions are right now as far as their team. They've got some good talent, but it's going to get harder as you get closer and closer to the cap. And I want to close with this. I'd still say the Lions, they were annihilated with injuries last year. They could have gotten a victory over the Commanders, but they were not healthy. Jaden Daniels pretty much went Super Saiyan. 45-31 was the score. They won 45-31 in the divisional playoffs. He was 22 of 31 passing, about 300 yards, couple touchdowns, 16 scrambles for 51 more, and the group effort of 482 total yards for the Commanders on 5 drives. And while I like the NFC North, I'll say this, they're still in a rebuild. The Bears were 5-12 last season. Again, Caleb Williams for the Bears threw for over 3,500 yards last year with 20 touchdowns, 6 picks. He's dynamic, and honestly, I like them better than the Vikings as far as the future. But for Minnesota, I can't see J.J. McCarthy taking the reins. I know he's a U of M product for the Vikings and making the postseason like they did under Sam Darnold. I think they take a significant step back. I don't think they make the playoffs. Do the Vikings take a step back too is the question, because I'm picturing the NFC North as the Lions is still the division winner with significantly less wins. You could still go Packers numero dos if you want to, but if I go completely shot in the dark, if I have the Bears at number 2, I don't think that's completely crazy. Whether or not that has them making the playoffs, if the Bears are the second seed in the NFC North, I'm not saying in totality, but the second best team in the NFC North, that might mean that the Packers and the Vikings all don't make the playoffs. So I think it's up in the air. I think all of these teams are due to take a step back, but as that is, the Lions should still hold their playoff spot. And the one last thing for me is a C plus, maybe they're saying, for the 2025 draft class. Talik Williams, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State, was the number 1 pick, 20th overall. You had Tate Badledge, the offensive lineman out of Georgia, number 57. Isaiah Slay from Arkansas Razorbacks, number 70 in the 3rd round. Miles Frazier, guard out of LSU. Ahmed Hassanin from Boise State, round 6, and 2 round 7 selections out of Georgia. Dan Jackson, a safety, wide receiver, Dominic Levitt. So we'll see how they end up panning out. I don't think that that's going to be more of a depth class from what they've mentioned right now. But I will say that the NFC North takes a significant step back. I do have the Lions still making the playoffs, but if the Bears do get that second best in the division, that would be interesting. I think they could be a problem in the future, but we'll see what happens with the Packers and Vikings. The only thing I'll say for sure, I think the Vikings might be the worst team in the NFC North, only because their quarterback situation has to start from the very beginning again. So that is my look on the Lions. I hope that it was at least apropos enough to be comparable, because again, I know more about the Tigers and everyone else, but I appreciate you guys tuning in. We got 2 more, and I can already feel my voice going because it's been a while since I've worked anything of significance. So where are we sitting? About 43 minutes. So for the Pistons outlook, I think it's pretty good, all things considered. They were 44-38 last year. Year-over-year improvement. They went from 14 wins a couple of seasons ago to 44 wins, marking the 6th biggest turnaround in NBA history, and finally giving fans in Detroit a reason for optimism going forward. Yes, it was a first-round loss to the New York Knicks in 7 games, but I really liked what I saw from this team, despite the horrific officiating when Tim Hardaway Jr. was fouled in the corner. That wasn't called. Pistons should have won that series. They didn't. They couldn't win a single game at LCA, which was the most disappointing part about all of it, but all things considered, not too bad. Cade Cunningham looks to be the superstar that he was expected to be. Keep in mind, Cade's still just 23. What is this, his 4th season now? 3rd, 4th season? 70 games played, 26 points per game, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, a steal and a block, 4.5 turnovers. You might want the turnovers to be cut down a little bit, but you understand that Kate Cunningham is the primary ball handler. He really is the only one on the Pistons right now that can drive offense, especially when Jaden Ivey was injured last year. And again, that's where I'll digress into Jaden. 23 years of age for Jaden, who's the same age as Cade. He played just 30 games. Again, that was a horrific ankle snap injury that he took at the hands of the Orlando Magic. You dive in there for a loose ball. Jaden Ivey, boy, oh boy, that was a brutal injury. Hopefully he comes back in full speed. He loves to attack the rim and try to build off that way. He will build on his three-point shot. Who knows with the rehab in the offseason, but 17.5 points per game is what the Pistons lost after his injury. 4 rebounds, 4 assisted steal, and half a block. Off-season worries, and this is a knucklehead as far as Malik Beasley, and I don't understand why he would even do this, especially when you make as much money as you do. But for Malik Beasley, 28 years of age, he played all 82 games. He was at 17.5 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, assists and a half, and he shot almost 42% from beyond the arc. But he was caught in the gambling ring, which was true. That took down a bunch of other NBA players. Again, not all of them were named, but there was a few of them that got taken down alongside Malik, and I think he was one of the biggest ones. Now, allegedly, on the other side, I have to use maybe some weapons use from a couple of years ago, but the gambling ring is what was really the big distraction. And that's what stopped the Pistons from offering him a significant extension. It could have been maybe 3 years. I'm not going to say 20, 25 million, but he was at least going to get 3 years, probably 15 plus. That's gone. Because on one hand, it's the right answer for the Pistons to do to distance themselves from the distractions. But Malik Beasley was the best shooter that the Pistons had from deep last year. Consistently scoring points, 6-man off the bench, you need that, and he really hurt himself, and that hurts the Pistons a lot. But as this hurts the team on the court, again, we talk about the deep ball being non-existent last year. He's responsible here fundamentally to me because he fumbled his own bag big time by making a huge mistake. So in steps a couple former D3 athletes and U of M sharpshooters. And again, I'm talking about Duncan Robinson. I can't believe it, but he's coming back home. 31 years of age, 3-year deal, 16 million per for 48 million in total. Not too bad from the Miami Heat. Honestly, good for him and Duncan Robinson because again, when he started playing D3 basketball before he ended up playing for Beeline and the Wolverines, he was really, really good from distance. He's kind of pressured that same way into the NBA. You know what he is. Again, until 2027 for Caris LeVert, but 11 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, and 2 assists for Duncan Robinson, career 40% three-point shooter from deep. And again, I jumped the gun a little bit. Caris LeVert, another former U of M man who's been a journeyman across the NBA, but it's a career 14 points per game on the low side, and that's still 14 points per game with 4 rebounds and 4 assists. I love the defense with a steal and a half and a block per game, maybe around that. So maybe a half a block, but definitely a steal on a 2-year deal, just over 14 and a half to 2027. So you lost Malik Beasley. You get Duncan Robinson, who's 31, and Caris LeVert, who's 30. Getting a little bit longer in the tooth, but good bench depth and scoring that are going to play predominant roles. And I really like that for Detroit. I think all things considered for Trajan Langdon, he kind of replenished the bench in a way that he needed to the most. And I think that it made a lot of sense for Detroit because you didn't want to be in cap hell, but you wanted to get some production that was going to be dependable and make sure that it worked the right way. So dependable big man. Jalen Duren, 21 years of age, continues to impress and is a walking double-double with 11 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 69% shooting. Again, a lot of that kind of sounds like DeAndre Jordan finishing at the rim, anything in close, a la Tyson Chandler back in the day. But that's where Jalen Duren's going to make his money. So again, 11 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists average, including a steal and a block. He stuffs the stat sheet. And also I mentioned this too, count on it in the postseason. Tobias Harris, 16 points per game, 8 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block, was a monster. And the 33-year-old was everything the Pistons could have asked for while Jaden Ivey was out with an injury, especially during that postseason. I'm not sure what's going to happen at the upcoming deadline after the season in the NBA because Tobias is 33, and he's only signed through the year. But I admit I'd be quite sad to see Tobias Harris leave because I think he's been a good linchpin for Detroit, and especially in his second turnaround. And the cap hit's going to have to be adjusted if Tobias comes back. You're not going to have him make $25 million, $30 million. They're going to have to move that around for Tobias, but he's pretty good. And I'm not sure for other fans that wanted Detroit to take big swings, they weren't going to be able to do so. Again, the biggest swing, and Alec Nava is going to know about this, for the Houston Rockets and Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant's 36, and that's not what Detroit needs right now. I don't think that they're a player away. And what does that mean to you? Because I think you need to keep things going with the young core. You got the gigantic improvement. You got J.B. Bickerstaff. You got Trajan Langdon, who knows what he's doing in the front office. I like where this Pistons team is right now. And again, we talked about it with the Phoenix Suns and Durant and Bradley Beal. Again, they blew up the team that was 2020 and 2021. I know it's several years ago, but it was Chris Paul, DeAndre, and Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Cam Payne. Yes, they lost to the Bucks as Giannis got his first title, but that team was in the driver's seat. Again, Chris Paul wasn't very young, but the rest of that team was. They gave up on DeAndre pretty quickly. I know he's not an elite rebounder, but he could still score. And he had Bridges, Johnson, and Payne, but they blew that up. Again, I don't think Monty Williams is the greatest coach. You saw that after going from Phoenix to Detroit, but when he was with the Pelicans and he had bad teams, it didn't perform well. He was only good when they had a team like the Suns. But then you go ahead and you make some transitions, and alongside with James Jones, who was still the sharpshooter and GM of the Phoenix Suns, you kind of make those moves in there and say, hey, you want to bring in some of these changes, let's bring in Durant and Beal and try to see what can happen. That did not work. And now they have, what, a $75 million 2-year deal, and alongside for, I think it's almost 70-something a year for Devin Booker just to keep him. And that's where they're at. Kind of a bridge too far. And that team looks a lot different. And that was only 3-4 years ago from where they were with the Suns. And it changes quickly. Glad they're not going that route there with the Pistons. In 24-25, it was the Cleveland Cavaliers that finished 64-18. It was the Indiana Pacers, though, that made the finals, 15-32. That was the 4th seed. So from the 1st seed, which was the best in the East, and the Cavs, only behind the Thunder. The Pacers made the finals at 15-32. The Milwaukee Bucks were the 5th seed, 48-34. They lost Damian Lillard as he went back to Portland. The Pistons were the 6th seed at 44-38. And in that Central Division, the Bulls did not make the playoffs. They were 39-43. So only the Oklahoma City Thunder, 68-14, had a better record than the Cavs. And maybe, I know this is a little bit early, but Ian's in here and he could speak to this if he wants to. Thunder won the title. And I know even the dynasty talk for the Florida Panthers is a little bit early. But we might be seeing that already with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And Sam Presti has got a billion picks still to work with. And all of their best players are signed. They're young. They're good. I believe the Oklahoma City Thunder could go for a couple more in a row or win 4 in 6 years or something like that, because this team is very good. Yes, the Pacers took them all the way to 7 games. Yes, it could have been different if Tyrese Halliburton never sustained an injury. Again, he got hurt in Game 7. It made you feel really bad. Even if you're an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, I bet you felt bad at that, but you were happy to see them win the title. But the Thunder are very good. The Pacers are very good. The Cavs are still very good. The Bucks still have Giannis, even though they lost Damian Lillard. So the Pistons will have work to do, but I still think the Pistons will be solidly a playoff team. A couple more things for me before we get into the close. Did you see that video on Instagram Live? I wanted to share this with everybody as Giannis's wife was streaming. Again, I wasn't sure if it was their house or whether they were staying in a hotel, but there was a roach in the house. And his wife wanted Giannis to kill this roach, so she goes on IG Live, takes his phone and streams it to about 60,000 people. And it was pretty hilarious. And that happened to be on the same day that Damian Lillard went back to Portland. And he goes jokingly, if you don't give me my phone back, I'm going to divorce you. This is not a joke. He didn't want to kill the roach anyway, but they ended up getting it out. But it was funny to see that on Instagram Live the same day that Damian Lillard went back to Portland. Again, some soft NBA free agency news. I know this is a Detroit Sports State of the Union, but Marcus Smart back to the LA Lakers on a 2-year, $11 million deal. I can't see how that would hurt. The same with DeAndre Ayton. Damian Lillard, 3 years, $42 million in the Portland return. He gets to go back to the backcourt with Drew Holiday after the Anthony Simons deal with the Celtics. Bradley Beal joins the Clips after the Suns buyout, 2 years and $11 million, and Supermax for champion SGA and Thunder. So what are the projections for the Pistons? 45 and 37 seem to be accurate. That would be one more win from last year. I do think losing Beasley, but gaining Robertson and LeVert keeps them in that same boat and maybe slightly better. That's why they have them with an extra win. I'm excited to see what an entire offseason of Jaden Ivey can bring. Hopefully he can stay there for an entire season. And I think that can be enough to win them a playoff round. If the Pistons do get into the playoffs, I'll bookmark it. I do think they get to the second round this year. It was depressing, again, as I mentioned, to not see them win a playoff game at LCA, but we know that Tim Hardaway Jr. was fouled. It wasn't called. Yes, I'm bitter, but I'm glad that the Pacers made the finals. Yes, they lost to the Thunder, but I'm glad they beat the Knicks because, again, I was very vengeful for that. Upcoming Pistons depth chart. So, again, you should have Cade Cunningham at the point, 23. Jaden Ivey at the guard, 23 as well. Oscar Thompson, 22 years of age. He averages about 10 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Power forward Tobias Harris, 33 years of age. He's the elder statesman with Jalen Duren in the front court as well. So Cade Cunningham, Ivey, Thompson, Tobias Harris, and Jalen Duren. Again, 23, 23, 22, 21, alongside the 33-year-old Tobias Harris. This team is still very, very young. Bench depth unit for Marcus Sasser, but he should be one of the key ones coming off the bench. Just 6'1" and 2 is as far as his average, but the 24-year-old is a shooter. It's hard to believe that Marcus Sasser is older than most of the team. And then Caris LeVert, 30 years of age, double-digit scorer, with Duncan Robinson, shooting guard, small forward position. You have Ron Holland. It would be a little bit smaller at 6'8", but he was a top 5 pick last year. Again, 6'3" and 1 as far as his average. Loves the slash. He's got tons of athleticism. We should continue to see his growth. And then my backup initially I have listed as Isaiah Stewart. I think that's his best role. 6.6 rebounds, 2 assists, 6'8", 250 for Isaiah Stewart. Beef Stew still just 24 years of age as well. Paul Reed will be the emergency depth. Again, you want to carry at least 10 guys that can score on your roster. Paul Reed will be the third backup, and then maybe I don't know too much about Ron Harper Jr., admittedly, out of his 30 out of Rutgers, but he's 6'4", 233, 24 years of age. That's probably the depth chart. So that's going to get you 12 deep for the Pistons. Again, you don't play that much, especially when you get into the playoffs, but that's probably where the depth chart will look like. And then what's your final thoughts on the Pistons? I think it's truly remarkable what coaching can do, because largely this was the same team as last year. I know you get a little bit more of a jump there for Cade Cunningham. You get some growth. You bring in Oscar Thompson. Jalen Duren has gotten better. But Monty Williams had an opportunity, which he collected his bag, so he's happy, sitting on the couch eating Flamin' Hot Cheetos and feeling good about himself. But J.B. Bickerstaff comes in. You should have won Coach of the Year award, not Kenny Atkinson. I understand where Cleveland finished. They were the best in the East. But for JB to go there from about 14 wins to bring them where they are right now, that is the turnaround that you're expecting. And that is what coaching can do when it's at its best. And we know that same way from the previous team that we talked about in the Open for the Tigers and for A.J. Hinch. J.B. Bickerstaff has had that same type of production. And Trajan Langdon, the new GM, and alongside from the changes that have been made from up top, is only 49 years of age still. It's clear that they have a direction of what they want to do. This core, I don't think, goes anywhere. Yes, we'll have to see in the near future what's going to happen with Tobias Harris, but there's not going to be a salary cap hell. They're not still paying Charlie Villanueva, Ben Gordon, and Josh Smith. All that stuff is finally gone, especially for Josh Smith as far as the delayed cap. They're going to need a right-hand man for Cade Cunningham eventually. Is that going to be Jaden Ivey who's going to grow into it? If this team takes the next step, it could be him. Maybe they can figure out something to do in future deadlines. But I like where the Pistons are. I think that they're fundamentally a playoff team. I do think they're going to win a round, and I like where they are. I don't think they need to change much. Again, as far as the all likelihood, and we'll bring this into our last topic for the Red Wings, as far as what teams will make the playoffs. If I gave you an option between the Tigers, the Lions, the Pistons, and the Red Wings, I think the one team you would take right now that wouldn't make the playoffs would be the Red Wings. I think the Pistons are a lock. I think the Lions will still make the playoffs, and the Tigers, while they've been 20-20 in their last 40, will still make it. I'm just going to take a momentary pause for some water and another cough drop, and we'll finish up. All right, guys, I appreciate your patience. I'm going to get here in with the Red Wings, and we'll close off the show. Again, I'm glad that we had Ian be able to chime in a little bit because it helped save my voice because we're at the hour mark. So if you missed the NHL 2025 free agency with Cooper Hopkins, and again, I don't even need to put that on my notes, that should be happening later this week. He had some stuff that he had to go ahead and take care of and fly back in from Seattle to California. I won't bring in all those details. I'll leave it to him whether or not he wants to discuss. That should be happening later this week, and that will be uploaded on Spotify and everything else per usual. But I will let you know as we close the show for the State of the Union and Detroit sports what the latest is for the Red Wings. Now, normally I would not get this out in front before doing the show, but I didn't want to let the Tigers trade deadline possibilities rot. So I will break in my notes of what I have with the Red Wings. So as we sit today, go ahead, Ian.
Will that NHL free agency recap be a space too?
Yes, it will. Although, Ian, admittedly, I'll probably have you just listen in on that one. Normally, when it's me and you, we'll definitely be chiming in and talk back and forth. But Cooper and I got a lot to get to, so I'm going to try to knock that down in a timely fashion. Maybe try to get it within an hour and a half, because if all of us are talking across, you might get maybe 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I got you. Sorry, I love talking sports, but I completely understand. I may not be able to make it anyway. I just wanted to know.
Oh, no, yeah, it definitely will, and it definitely will be uploaded at the end of the, once it's all done, right at the Hopeless Sports Guy spot, right on the blog, everything else that you usually can find it, or in the space. But I appreciate that, Ian. I appreciate you looking out. So the latest deal with the Red Wings, it is still $12 million in cap space, all things official. More than $10 million, I want to make this known, comes off the books just after this year. And Ben Sherratt, Justin Hall, Eric Gustafson, who are all in their mid-30s on the blue line side, as they start to depart. Maybe they can fetch a very low price at the deadline. I know you're not going to get multiple firsts for Ben Sherratt anymore, and I'm not saying that. I'm just throwing it out there. You're not going to get much, but nothing egregious stands out for Detroit as far as what they should or shouldn't do. Yes, general manager Steve Yzerman and head coach Tom McClellan want more production from Andrew Kopp. He's still due $5.63 million until 2027, and JT Compher at $5.10 until 2028. But the cap hits largely are fine, especially if they can get more of a production jump. What does that look like? If I have to spitball, probably 40 to 45 points. If they can get somewhere around there, they're probably closer to 30, 35. But if they can get a 10-point jump, I think that's going to be enough depth scoring for the Red Wings to actually make a playoffs for once in their life. I'm not saying they're going to do it this year, but that would be the types of things that you look for. So what I'd like, I understand that this is dreamland, but Yzerman needs to work a sign and trade with the upcoming RFA Jason Robertson. Jim Nill needs the cap space. Now, admittedly, over the last couple of weeks from when I had gotten all the notes together, Jim Nill was able to make some moves. Again, Jimmy Benn went from about $9.5 million to about $1.5 as far as his cap because he had to. They had negative cap space. But Mikko Rantanen, Sagan hints Duchesne. Duchesne just signed 4 years, 4.5. The 25-year-old in Robo is an 80-point guy falling on a bed. Again, Glenn Gullickson is their new coach. Roddick Foxa comes in 3 years, $6 million. That was all to say that they needed the cap space. They still kind of do. Jason Robertson might be one of the odd men out, considering who's already signed, as I mentioned, alongside with Sagan, Rantanen, and Duchesne. Can never say never, but if it's going to happen for Dallas, it might have to be at a discount. If I'm Robo, I'm really not taking one, to be honest with you. I know the long game roadmap. Patrick Kane and James Van Riemsdyk. Yes, they're on the same team. Yes, it's 2025, and yes, they were the top 2 picks in the 2007 draft. It's been a while for the reunion, but I'm not upset with Kane. How can you be? 72 games played, 21 goals, 38 assists, 59 points, and a -16, when the 36-year-old is still top 4 in Red Wings team scoring. JVR last year in the mix with CBJ. 71 games played, 16 goals, 20 assists, 36 points, -4. Yes, he's also 36, but it's 1 year, $1 million. That's a flyer. Can never get mad at those. And for JVR, a guaranteed 30-point guy and a double-digit scorer. The Red Wings need that desperately. That's why a couple of seasons ago, whether he was a member of initial draft, Daniel Sprong and Pittsburgh Penguins, a couple seasons ago with the Kraken and the Red Wings, I don't care about the defensive side, because Daniel Sprong, whether he's always bottom 6 as he usually is, can get you 20 goals. And you need that production. Maybe JVR can get somewhere close to that. And if you take production from JVR, as I just talked about with Kopp and Comfer and some of those things there, maybe about 35, 40 points. Well, JVR had 36. That's more than Kopp and Comfer last year if you take them individually. So those are the types of moves that you need to make. You need to acquiesce and build on your secondary production, your bottom 6 lines. So that's good work. Mason Appleton, 2 years, just under $3 million, and 2.9 is the same rate for what you already have in JVR. So I would take that. You didn't have to spend too much. You do admittedly take 2 more flyers on defensemen. First, it's Jacob Bernard Docker, the 25-year-old, 1 year at $875K, just over $175K above the minimum. And then Ian Mitchell, $75K above the minimum, $775 for the 26-year-old in a 1 year. And they cap dump Vlad Tarasenko to the Minnesota Wild. So nothing extravagant for Detroit. Again, when you bring in JVR, Mason Appleton, Jacob Bernard Docker, and Ian Mitchell, these are not moves that move the needle. And the cap dump for Vlad Tarasenko was badly needed, because Detroit needs to kind of get everything squared away. But I'm okay with it now, because admittedly, why overpay when this class doesn't move the collective needle past Marner? Even with the trade alongside the Anaheim Ducks that sent the 2026 fourth rounder and a 2027 second, Peter Mrazek, in exchange for John Gibson, the 31-year-old is still due $12.8 million, 6.4 for the next 2 seasons. But his career numbers, let me get Ian back in here. But for Gibson's career numbers, 506 games played, 204 wins, 217 losses, 63 overtime losses, 289 goals against, 910 save percentage, 24 shutouts. Those are really good career numbers. Those are also numbers that are largely behind a Ducks team for the most part in his career that hasn't been all that strong. So for Yzerman to make that move, and alongside for John Gibson, yes, I know he's 31, it's worth making. He didn't give up all that much, and I have to look at it again, and I had to make a double or triple look, because right now they lost Alex Lyon. Again, you move on for Peter Mrazek. They don't have any other backups other than Cam Talbot. So John Gibson is going to be the numero uno here. It could be a 1A, 1B down the line, But John Gibson's going to get his opportunity to start, and alongside 37-year-old Cam Talbot. I could see that tandem getting 75 plus games of the 82 game season. Yes, it'll go to 84 in the next CBA. We'll talk about that more toward the start of the regular season when Cooper Hopkins and I either work with the Flames and the Oilers or the Canucks. But I see them getting 75 plus games, and maybe another shot for the 22-year-old Sebastian Cossa for the rest. Again, Sebastian Cossa is probably not going to be the same guy that you thought he would be. He's not going to be Andre Vasilevsky as far as one of those big jumps, because he really hasn't had great numbers with the Griffins. Again, he can hover around 905, 910 in the AHL, but when you get to the NHL, especially behind the Red Wings defense that they have, isn't exactly strength. But this is where I kind of want to lay down the law. I don't think I'm going to be as fire and brimstone here just to save my voice. I'll save that more so for the NHL free agency frenzy for Detroit. But I'm officially placing my expectations for the Red Wings and for Steve Yzerman himself. The upcoming 25-26 season will be the last season that the Red Wings do not make the playoffs. And I will say this also better be the last season that the Red Wings do not make the playoffs. I'm placing my expectations. Yzerman has been the GM here since 2019. Again, the first 3 seasons do not count. Again, he had to clean up the nuclear wasteland of Ken Holland. I talked about that many times. In between Jimmy Howard, Justin Abelkader, Jonathan Erickson, they were in cap hell. Again, we're still paying Justin Abelkader now. I believe it's going to be the final season for him. But this team was a disaster. It was nothing close to what the Vegas Golden Knights inherited when they were pretty much able to lock into the playoffs and go to the Stanley Cup Finals in their first year. And it was also nothing freaking close to what the Seattle Kraken were able to start with. They were starting from the ground up. They were starting like the Ottawa Senators, who left their sheet at home in their initial draft. They were starting from ground zero. And now Yzerman has got them into a functional franchise. But for Yzerman, in this functional year 4, it is year 7 in totality. And this is how I always kind of throw the landscape, especially for hockey franchise and everything else, fair or unfair. But when you get into a year 4, as long as it's functional, any year 4 is where you need to start to place your expectations, because you're at the precipice of where you think the prospect pool has been built or is continuing to be built, where your NHL and AHL franchises are both functional, where you have an initial top 6 that you know is going to score. Everybody has problems with their bottom 6, but you have initial top 6 that you can depend on. You got some guys in your back end defense that can headline top lines. You have some goaltending that can be counted upon or not, but it's not going to go ahead and lead you to automatic losses. You have a functional franchise. You have draft picks. You have guys that you can count on in the future that can step up. And Yzerman has all of that. And now that he has all that in his year 7 and functional year 4, this is where expectations need to be placed. And this is why this is the final year I'll say I'll be okay with him not making the playoffs. No, I won't be happy if they don't make it, but this will be the last year that I understand it. Because upcoming in 2026, never too early to talk about this because it has the class it does. Jack Eichel, Cale Makar, Connor McDavid, Kirill Kaprizov, Kyle Connor, Jason Robertson, and the like. That does not mean that all these guys will not go back to their same team, but they're available. You could make offer sheets. Steve Yzerman's got to use that pool. Go get me someone. I loved the signing of Alex DeBrincat a couple of seasons ago, and I still do. And that trade from the Ottawa Senators, yes, it lost you Dominic Kubalik, but again, in his lowest totals, that's DeBrincat's lowest totals in general for his career. He would still be a slam dunk for 50-plus points, and he's been a consistent scorer for the Red Wings since he's been here. I need that Stevie Y magic. I need to see that voodoo again make a significant signing. Again, maybe some of those other picks in the late rounds for Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Andre Vasilevsky have dried up in the second, third, and fourth rounds, but you definitely can say in the first-round picks for Yzerman, they've hit. Marco Kasper looked really good last year. when you made that coaching change and alongside Derek Lalonde to Todd McClellan. You hit on Moritz Seider when everyone thought that that was going to be a reach. He probably still could have been there in the second or third round. You never know, taking a shot in the dark for the German defenseman, but can't say he isn't one of the best defensemen on the team. And you certainly can make the argument that Lucas Raymond is every bit as good as Tim Stutzla. He's the best guy on the team right now for Detroit. So he's hit on the first round picks. And you can't say he's hit on ASP yet, Axel Sandin Pellica on the blue line, because we haven't seen him yet. But he seems to be every bit as good as the offensive defenseman, puck-moving variety that can score and be a power play, just mastery. Just bring the fire there when they need it. And I think he definitely could. He's one of the guys that is a huge piece and will be going forward. Ian, do you have any thoughts before I talk about the division?
Well, I joined you for many a Red Wing broadcast, even some where we weren't really sure if the Red Wings were going to pull off the win, and
right.
Lo and behold, they would. And it was always fun because the power play was the biggest strength of the Red Wings, and it was fun to watch. One thing that I think you already noted, the defense needed help, and goaltending, there needed to be someone else in the net. You talked about John Gibson along with Cam Talbot, a 1A, 1B situation. Defense-wise, I'm sure you'll go into more detail on the moves, but I would think Yzerman has attempted to solve that problem.
Yeah, I mean, with Jacob Bernard Docker and Ian Mitchell, there are guys that are taking flyers on, but yeah, he's attempted to, but it's very soft, Ian. It's not something that you're still going to be looking at on the depth chart. You're saying Hall and Sherratt and everyone else are probably still going to be on this team this year. And I know it doesn't make you feel very good, but you're also going to need to get more step-ups from guys like Moritz Seider and Simon Edvinsson if they want to be able to get in the postseason. It's going to be on everybody.
Yeah, but I did, and we talked about this during the playoffs when we were discussing what our teams would do. Next free agency class is going to be loaded.
Yes.
And we were all thinking, our teams, maybe our teams don't make it to the playoffs or don't do as well next season. But by that point, the Red Wings should, by all accounts, have very adequate cap space to work with for another weapon.
Yeah.
The Blues should, because we'll finally be out of the Justin Falk contract. Or maybe it's 2 years. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, right now, it's kind of like maybe it's one more year to go.
That's really all it is. I know sometimes, Ian, they'll make the comparison of kicking the can down the road, and you always say 1 year for everybody, but it really is. The Blues are right there. The Red Wings are right there. I think this is probably the point where they can start to have some runway to make consistent playoff berths.
Agreed. And you know what? I would enjoy them because I did not watch hockey when the Red Wings were at, when it was still the Red Wing Empire.
Right.
I was, hockey just. I live in Kansas City. We don't want. There's no hockey here. There's no presence. But being a dedicated student, I went ahead and I studied the history of those teams. And the history of that team, my God.
See, the thing is, as I mentioned this, Ian, the Red Wings fans, depending on your age group, like again for me, I'm 38. I didn't really grow up into the Red Wings, the Dead Things era. I grew up into the dynasty. I grew up in all those playoff berths of 25 consecutive years and this and that. Yeah, there was a lot of franchise history and a lot of good things to feel good about. And then when you go into this lull from 2016 to where they hadn't made the postseason, I think fans don't realize how good they had it for as long as they did.
Yeah. See, I can tell you about that situation, not for hockey, because I didn't really pick up a hockey team until I was in college in Springfield, and they were showing the Blues all the time. But I think I told you this. My first experience watching the Chiefs were not the high-flying Trent Green offenses. No. My first experiences were Brody Croyle, Damon Hoover, Tyler Thigpen, and then Matt Castle. I didn't see consistent winning football from the Chiefs until Alex Smith.
Yeah. And I bet that was extremely painful, and that's a good segue in between for what the Red Wings have been going through because, yeah, there's been a lot of hard times, but eventually when you draft right and you do the things that you're supposed to get, you get somebody like Patrick Mahomes, and it changes everything.
Absolutely. And, man, no one thought they would do it because the last time, and I think you'll recognize his name, before Mahomes, the last guy they drafted in the first round was a guy named Todd Blackledge.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it did not go well. And after that, it was basically a run on who's left over from the 49ers.
Right.
Well, then it was like Steve DeBerg, Steve Bono. We had Joe Montana for a quick minute, but then Elvis Gerbach.
There is a lot of losing before there's winning sometimes, and sometimes franchises go through it. So the ups and downs of the roller coaster we're talking about, I like all the points that you brought up, Ian, because it's apropos. I do want to mention this before I get set to close out on the Red Wings and close this whole show, and then humbly thank Ian for also bringing in great points and saving my voice in this long show. As I stated earlier, Toronto, Tampa, Florida, Ottawa, and Montreal all better than the Red Wings in the division, at least in my opinion. If the Red Wings want to make the postseason, this is the biggest bugaboo that they got to correct, and this has happened consistently over the last 4 or 5 years, where they go into the month of March, and this is not the time that you want to do so because April ends the regular season, but they go into the month of March, Ian, and they lose 10 of the first 12 games, and they fall apart like a wet paper bag when it really matters. Again, if you want to blame Yzerman, you could blame him for the substandard free agent moves in Sherratt, Petrie, who's now trying to cup chase with the Florida Panthers, Hull, and head coach Derek Lalonde. I will completely jump on board with that. But again, as I mentioned earlier as well, he's hit the mark on the first rounders. Sider, Raymond, ASP, Marco Casper, despite never getting draft lottery luck or moving down all the time. Yes, maybe the draft steals from Tampa Bay have dried up, but the organization now as a whole is healthy. The pipeline's good, and I thank Yzerman for that dearly because what Ken Holland has done, and again, I won't break into the preview for the free agency frenzy, but I do want to mention this. As far as what Ken Holland has done, and now what he's doing with the LA Kings, are you effing kidding me? Cody Ceci on that deal? I don't want to go back to that for Detroit. So I think Yzerman from where they are right now. They know they have not made the postseason since 2016, and that's the goal. I don't think the Red Wings make it this year, but I will give you my promise. If the Red Wings don't make the playoffs 2 years from now, 26 and 27, I go full nuclear on this show, and you can bookmark that.
All right. By the way, you mentioned the Cody Ceci deal, and just a few off seasons ago, we were laughing at the Blue Jackets for giving Goodbranson a 4x4. That's by all accounts. Look, we're talking about two guys that are old and don't do much, but a gun to my head, I'm taking Goodbranson over Ceci.
Yes. What are they doing over there? But that's the Ken Holland experience. That's my little preview here from a few days from now. Again, I marked that in my notes as far as that show. I won't dive into everything because we got a whole set of league and slate to get to. So per tradition, here are the NHL standings from last season. I won't go all over them. They'll be in the notes that gets posted when the show gets uploaded. So here's what I'll do, Ian. I'll play this game with you as well. I'll go across a team that missed the postseason last year that will make it this year, and a team that fell out of the playoffs that won't. So again, give me a team last year that made the playoffs, they're going to fall out, and a team that didn't make it that you think that can get in. That's the game we'll play. I'll just highlight this very quickly before we get into that. Detroit begins this season at LCA on October 9th. That's against the Montreal Canadiens. 5 of the first 6 games are on home ice. All 6 of them are against playoff teams. It'll be Montreal, Toronto twice, Florida, Tampa, Edmonton. That's how they open the season. Here's some highlights. 7 of the next 8 after that 6 will be on the road through November 14th, and then 10 of 13 at home through December 2nd, followed by a 6-game road trip through December 13th. Detroit will end the season on a 2-game road stand in Florida. That'll be Tampa and Florida on April 13th and 15th. There'll be 9 back-to-backs, which are the fewest in the league for Calgary and Winnipeg. Most teams have 15 and 16 because of the 2.5-week Olympic break, as the league will pause between February 6th and 24th. So expect, again, lots of back-to-backs, 15 and 16 for most teams in many cases, and lots of 3 games in 4 nights. Again, we'll discuss all of that in the upcoming CBA and schedule quirks and the Flames opener with Cooper Hopkins. That'll probably be Wednesday, October 8th, 10 Eastern against Edmonton, or we have the option Thursday the next night in Vancouver in that same slot. So, Alec, this is where I'll leave it to you. We will start in the East at first. So again, in the Atlantic, 5 teams made it. Toronto, Tampa, Florida, Ottawa, and Montreal. Detroit was 5 points out. And then you also had the top 3 in the Metro, Washington, Carolina, New Jersey. It was Columbus 2 points out. Both New York teams, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, didn't make it. Do you think there is going to be any adjustments in the East? You can go right to the rest if you want to, but any adjustments in the East as far as who makes? Because honestly, Ian, I'll be completely truthful with you. I think the seedings probably stay the same. Teams might move up and down, but I do think Toronto, Tampa, Florida, Ottawa, and Montreal still make the postseason.
So for the East, I say, you may think I'm crazy, maybe not. I don't think the Capitals make it back to the playoffs.
You got Capitals out. Okay.
I got Capitals out. And you know what? Columbus, it's time. It is time to go back.
You know what, Ian? As far as a dark horse, and it's not even a dark horse because they've been close. We both like their core. You like their young players. That was my only team that I thought might move back in. Who would leave? I don't know about Washington, but I hope that I'm not rubbing off on you as far as I was calling them more so. We use the term of a paper tiger, but for them to be the top seed in the East and then fall all the way out, that would be a disaster.
I wanted to do something at least a little because the obvious, not the obvious, but the easy choice would be saying, Montreal and Columbus switch places.
Right, yes. You're absolutely correct. And I appreciate the fact that you went on the limb for that because you're right. Honestly, if I'm looking at that too, that's probably where I go. You could argue Ottawa, but I do think Ottawa might be a little bit step ahead, but Montreal's a very good team too. But we still keep the Red Wings out. Again, he's got Washington. I don't know if I go that far, but also I will say this. If I take the Devils, that's probably a fool's errand because they just weren't healthy at all. They should have a much better record. And I don't see Columbus, or I don't see Carolina, falling all the way out. If I have to take the easy route, Ian's right. it would probably be Montreal, but I like that Columbus pick. But as far
By
as
the
the,
way,
go ahead.
you are not going to guess who I'm going to say is out for the West.
I
Matter of
can't.
fact, you might just call me crazy.
If you say Vegas, I will say that you are crazy. That's the one team I won't say. But go with the West. I'll give you first dibs on it.
Okay, out for I think maybe the first time with these two players. I say that the Edmonton Oilers are out.
The Oilers are out, says Ian.
And as for who's in,
Yeah. Again, Minnesota, St. Louis was the wild card as well. Again, those were good ones. You had Vegas, the Kings, and the Oilers were in, but you got them out. Who are you taking?
the NHL playoffs will ring with the sounds of Chelsea Dagger. Give me the Chicago Blackhawks.
Man, you're going hot on these picks right now. I appreciate the confidence, Ian. You know what? Honestly, out of the two takes, I think Columbus, you nailed that one. I think you're 100% correct on that. But what's fun if you're not going to take hot takes? If Edmonton fall, let me just say this before I close the show, because now I have to talk to you more about this because you brought it up and I can't let it slide. If Edmonton falls out, Connor McDavid's gone.
Yeah, but again, we've been saying it for the past 2 seasons. Last year was their shot. And I truly believe that last year was their shot. I don't think, even if they make it, they wouldn't make it to the Stanley Cup final, but I am serious. I don't think the Oilers have done enough in this offseason to go back.
No.
I mean, look at, it was a joke. Everyone laughed at the Oilers. But think about it. Vancouver, to their detriment, locked up everybody. Besser's back. Demko's back.
They took Evander Kane.
Evander Kane it's there. I mean, and John Gibson, another goaltending option for them, goes to Detroit.
Yeah,
and a second pairing, or maybe even a third pairing center, and Ryan Donato gets locked up long term in a 4x4 to Chicago.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Again, we talked about Donato a lot, whether it was Alec, yourself, me, Cooper. We really, really like Ryan Donato. Honestly, I'm very happy for him that he's happy in there and getting all those points because you're absolutely right. And I saw the post. I know it might be in poor taste and this and that. We're not going to laugh about it, but I do want to mention the Oilers, as bad as this is for me to say, were they wondering if Carter Hart was even available? I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Campbell has been MIA, and they signed him to a 6x6.
Right. You can't continue to go through this. Like, okay, even if the hot take doesn't work out and the Oilers make the playoffs, we wouldn't be surprised. But we would be surprised, Ian, in one sense, if Skinner and Pickard was good enough to help you win a postseason or win the Stanley Cup, because they're not.
No. Yeah, man, it's everybody laugh at the Oilers season, man. And I'm telling you, if there is one team in the West that is going to fall out, that is not the Kings. The Kings are the easy option to fall out in the playoffs.
Right.
But I'm picking the Oilers.
I appreciate that because I could have leaned the Kings as well. But since you're drinking the Kool-Aid, I'm gonna get this one wrong, but I'm gonna go with a hot take as well. Dallas Stars, they're in cap hell. Glenn Gulletson is his second turnaround. Peter DeBoer, You had the bench there alongside for Jake Ottinger, who we were shocked. We were all in on the broadcast when that happened. I don't know if you ever recover from something like that. Dallas Stars out. I'm going to go very hot take. It's not going to happen. Who goes in? You know what? I could argue Minnesota also out as well, but I think that's too easy. I like this team. They were close last year. I could still argue for Calgary and Cooper just to say that. I think depending on what happens for them, they could be sellers if they don't get off to a great start because their schedule is difficult. It's been the first year since the name change, but it goes from UHC to the Utah Mammoth. I will take the Stars out. Give me the Mammoth. They come in. Those would be my picks for the West. So we will close out our show. Again, we'll close on some silliness there and some flaming hot takes. But I really enjoyed it, Ian. I appreciate you chiming in and giving me some of your knowledge. Again, later throughout this week, I will have NHL free agency special with Cooper Hopkins. Again, Cooper and I will be in there. You're free to listen in, and everyone else is as well. But it'll probably just be us back and forth because it'll probably be a 90 minutes plus show going through everything. And before I close, since Ian's in here, I know he can probably laugh at this. I wasn't going to do this now, but since Ian's in here, I might as well spill the beans. So let's look and see what the date detail is. This is not a huge story, but it is still something that was pretty fun to talk about. And I was asked as a favor for Go Live Sportscast, who help broadcast the Sharks games with me. So on August 1st, that is a Friday, 8 a.m. on ESPN2, my voice will make a debut on ESPN2 because there was an event that was shot at Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. If you've ever heard of mailboat jumping, yes, it's an actual thing where you have all of these luxury houses and alongside Wisconsin, it's very close to Chicago and all that. Rich people on the dock need their mail too. And there's also TV just delivered and all that. But there's a competition where 4 of 6 contestants compete to become mail jumpers and actually get a job doing so. Well, I had to do play-by-play of some mail jumping. So you will see my voice, or hear my voice at least, but you will see the event at 8 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2 on August 1st. It will be on the ESPN Ocho part of broadcasting. I know it sounds like dodgeball, but I'm telling you the truth. On August 1st, 8 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2. So look out for that. The Sharks are going to share more of it. Everyone's going to have a good time with it. I'll let them share it all, but I'm making the announcement just in case for a teaser. I'll break the announcement down a little bit more so Cooper can laugh at it later, get everything recorded, and we'll have a good time. So, Ian, I appreciate you joining in. I wanted to make that little announcement just so we can all chuckle at it. I will bring that more into light a little bit later this week. The Sharks will talk about it a little bit more. But look forward to NHL free agency frenzy a little bit later this week. You guys have a good one. Be well. We'll talk soon.